You don't always see it right away, but when a man hurts a good woman, something shifts. Not in loud arguments or slammed doors, but in the quiet way she stops repeating herself. The way she goes from fighting for the relationship to just being silent. That silence isn't peace, it's pain with a boundary. And he might think he's still got time to fix it, still got her heart in his hands. But what he doesn't realize is the moment she had to start loving herself more than begging to be seen, that's the moment he started losing her. Not because she stopped caring, but because she finally started caring for herself. And once a good woman walks away, not out of anger, but out of clarity, he's not just losing her. He's losing the version of himself that only her love could have grown. A lot of people don't talk about what it really feels like when someone you trusted ends up being the one who hurt you. Especially when you're the one who kept showing up, kept giving grace, kept believing in the potential, not just of the relationship, but of the person. And when that hurt comes from a man to a good woman, it's not just about the betrayal, it's about the slow unraveling of the space she held for him, the emotional weight she carried quietly, the way she bent without breaking. This message isn't about blame, it's about clarity. Because when a good woman gets hurt, something deeper is at stake. And if you've ever been on either side of that story, hurting or healing, you know this truth lives in the silence, in the little moments, in what's no longer said. Let's talk about what's really lost when she walks away. When she stops explaining herself, it's not because she suddenly stopped caring. It's because she got tired of repeating her pain to someone who didn't seem to be listening. In the beginning, she tried. Maybe she even over-explained. She told you what made her feel unseen, what hurt her, what she needed from you. Not just once, but over and over again, hoping that this time it would land. This time it would click. And each time she spoke, it wasn't to criticize, it was to connect. But when those words were met with dismissal, deflection, or silence, something inside her started to shift. She started to realize that her voice didn't carry the weight it should have in the relationship, that her feelings were being minimized, maybe even misunderstood. And so, eventually, she stopped explaining, not out of spite, not to punish you, but because explaining began to feel like begging, and no one wants to beg to be heard by the person they love. See, a good woman doesn't walk away the first time she's hurt. She leans in, she communicates, she believes things can get better. But when that effort is met with resistance or indifference, she learns to protect herself. Her silence isn't passive, it's protective. It's the boundary she sets when her emotional safety has been worn down. You might notice she's quieter, not cold, just distant, less reactive, less engaged. That's not peace. That's her learning to be careful with her words because she's not sure if they matter anymore. This is where a lot of men get it wrong. They think she's not arguing anymore, so maybe we're okay. But the danger isn't when she's upset. It's when she's done trying, when she's no longer fighting to be understood. That's not progress. That's disconnection. And by the time you realize how quiet she's gotten, it might be too late. The emotional labor of constantly having to explain herself takes a toll. She starts wondering, if I have to keep saying the same thing just to feel seen, is this really love? And that question doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes from a history of moments where her needs were brushed aside, where her vulnerability was met with defensiveness instead of understanding. Now, here's the part that matters. It's not too late if you're willing to listen differently, not just to the words she says, but to what she stopped saying. The sighs, the pauses, the emotional space between you. That's communication too. Emotional maturity means tuning in, not just reacting. It means asking, what am I missing here? Instead of assuming everything's fine because the house is quiet. When she stops explaining, don't let pride convince you it's not a big deal. That silence is a signal. It's a call for presence, not just problem solving. And if you can show up, listen with care, and take responsibility without needing to be right, you might still reach her heart, because what she wanted all along wasn't perfection. It was partnership. Someone who would make her feel like her voice didn't have to compete to be heard. The cost of ignoring her needs doesn't always show up in a dramatic moment. It builds quietly over time. It's in the way she stops reaching for your hand, the way she laughs less around you, the way she starts doing life beside you, not with you. Because for a while, she tried to bring you in. She told you when she was overwhelmed, when she felt unsupported, when the weight of everything started to feel too heavy. And maybe it didn't sound urgent in the moment. Maybe you thought she was just venting, but those were the early signs that her emotional tank was running low and she was asking for help in the only way she knew how. When you ignore her needs, not out of malice, but maybe because you didn't think they were that big of a deal, you're teaching her something. You're teaching her that she has to shrink parts of herself to stay connected to you, that her vulnerability isn't safe, that her emotional reality doesn't hold the same weight as yours. And even though you may not say that outright, your actions do. The nights you brushed her off with, "I'm tired," the times you heard her pain but didn't ask follow-up questions, the way you moved on quickly while she was still sitting in what hurt her. What makes this hard is that a lot of men aren't taught how to tune into emotional needs. We're taught to fix problems, not feel through them. But relationships aren't projects, they're people. And when a good woman shares her needs, she's not being needy, she's being honest. And it takes strength to do that. She's saying, "This is what helps me feel close to you." That's not a complaint. That's an invitation. And when that invitation keeps getting ignored, she starts to pull away, not because she wants to, but because she has to. Because showing up for someone who doesn't show up for her starts to feel like self-betrayal. And you'll notice it. Not all at once, but in the little ways she stops asking for more. That might seem like things are better, but underneath, she's grieving the version of you she hoped would meet her there. The cost of ignoring her needs isn't just about what she loses. It's about what you lose to. You lose the intimacy that only comes from emotional safety. You lose the trust that's built when someone feels seen. You lose the small, sacred moments where love deepens, not in grand gestures, but in quiet, consistent care. It's not too late to change that pattern. Start small, ask her what she needs, and then stay with her answer even if it makes you uncomfortable, even if it calls you to grow. Because when a woman feels emotionally supported, she gives from a deeper place, not out of obligation, but out of overflow. And that kind of love, that's not just rare, it's worth protecting. Losing her doesn't happen the day she walks out. It happens long before that. On the days she stops believing your words, when the trust begins to erode piece by piece, and you don't even notice it slipping. It starts small. A promise you didn't keep, a conversation where she opened up and you shut down, a moment when she needed you to show up and you chose convenience over commitment. You might think she brushed it off, that she's strong enough to handle it, and she is. But strong doesn't mean unaffected. She felt it. She just didn't want to make it a fight. Trust isn't just about being faithful in the big ways. It's about being dependable in the small ones. When she says, "I'm okay," and you know she's not, but you let it go because it's easier than leaning in. When she asks for support, not loudly, but in the subtle ways she's always done, and you miss it because you're not really listening. Over time, those little misses become patterns. And patterns become distance. When a woman starts questioning whether she can count on you emotionally, that's when the relationship starts shifting. Not because she wants to leave, but because she's starting to protect herself. She's starting to ask, if I fall, will he catch me? Or will I just hit the ground again? And that's a hard place for love to grow from. What's important to understand is that trust isn't just about loyalty. It's about emotional safety. It's about her knowing that when she's vulnerable with you, you won't turn it into a weapon. That when she shares something tender, you won't roll your eyes or shut down. That when she gives you access to the deepest parts of who she is, you won't take it for granted. And if she starts to feel like that trust is one-sided, like she's giving more than she's receiving, she doesn't just pull back. She starts grieving the relationship while still in it. By the time you realize she's distant, quiet, not the same, she's already felt the cracks forming for a while. And here's the thing, she didn't want to lose that trust. She wanted you to protect it. She wanted to believe that she could hand you her heart without needing to hold it in pieces. But when trust is broken, even subtly, it changes how safe she feels around you. And when emotional safety disappears, so does her softness, her laughter, her affection, not out of spite, but out of survival. Rebuilding trust doesn't start with big gestures. It starts with small consistency, keeping your word, owning your mistakes, leaning in when she pulls away, not to chase her, but to reassure her. Because when a woman feels like she can trust you again, not just to stay, but to truly see her, that's when she lets her guard down. That's when she starts to believe in the relationship again. And if you're lucky enough to earn back that trust, don't waste it. Because losing her starts with losing her trust. But earning her trust again, that's where real love begins. When silence replaces connection, it doesn't always come with a loud warning. Sometimes it just slips in, quiet, steady, unnoticed. The conversations that used to last for hours become short and surface level. The little jokes, the check-ins, the late night talks, they start fading, not because the love is gone, but because the emotional safety isn't there anymore. She's still around. She's still doing the things that need to be done. But something in her voice, in her eyes, in the space between you, it's different. That silence isn't peaceful. it's protective. There was a time she used to tell you everything, not just what happened in her day, but what it meant to her, how something made her feel, what she was carrying. She let you in, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. That was her way of building connection, of saying, this is who I am. I want you to know me. But when those moments started being met with indifference, distraction, or defensiveness, the silence began, not all at once, but gradually. Every time she shared and felt dismissed, the door closed just a little bit more. We don't always notice when the silence starts. It might look like she's just tired or that she's busy. But what's really happening is she's learning that connection doesn't feel safe anymore, that her words don't land the way they used to. That speaking up might lead to an argument, or worse, nothing at all. And so she stops opening up, stops initiating, stops reaching out, not because she stopped loving you, but because she started protecting her peace. And here's what most people miss: silence doesn't mean she's okay with how things are. It means she's carrying the weight of the relationship quietly. She's still present, still contributing, but emotionally, she's somewhere else. She's watching the connection fade and asking herself if she can live with that. And when that becomes her normal, rebuilding isn't just about talking again. It's about making it safe for her to trust the connection. Real connection doesn't come from just talking more. It comes from listening better. It comes from showing her through actions and consistency that her voice matters to you. That you don't just hear her, you hold what she says with care. That you notice when she's gone quiet, and you don't just leave it alone because it's easier not to ask. You check in. You say, I miss you. Not just when it's convenient, but when it's necessary. When silence replaces connection, it's not too late. But it does take courage to break through. Not just courage to speak, but to listen, to take ownership, to ask the hard questions. Have I made it safe for her to open up? Have I been truly present? Have I created space for her emotions, or just expected her to manage them on her own? Those questions don't push her away. They bring her closer. Because when she sees you making the effort to truly connect again, not to control, not to fix, but to understand, that's when the silence starts to soften. And that's when connection has a chance to return. She didn't pull back out of nowhere. That distance you're feeling now didn't just show up overnight. It built up every time she needed you to step up, and you didn't. Maybe not in some big, dramatic way. Maybe it was subtle. Maybe it was when she was overwhelmed and you looked the other way. Maybe it was when the hard conversations came up and you shut down instead of leaning in. Maybe it was the little things, showing up late, forgetting what mattered to her, brushing off her concerns like they were just moods. And in those moments, what she saw wasn't just a man avoiding conflict. She saw a partner who wasn't showing up for her when it counted. She didn't want to lead the relationship alone. She wanted to feel like she had someone beside her, not someone she had to drag behind her. She wanted to rest in your strength sometimes, not always carry it all on her own. And when that didn't happen, when it became clear that she was the one doing the emotional heavy lifting, she pulled back. Not because she stopped loving you, but because she got tired of loving in a way that felt one-sided. That pullback, it wasn't an act of revenge. It was self-preservation. She reached her limit, and before she started resenting you, she chose distance. That was her boundary. Her way of saying, I can't keep showing up for someone who keeps choosing not to show up for me. And the part that stings is, by the time you notice the gap between you, she's already been standing in it for a long time alone. A lot of men misread this moment. They think she's being cold or overreacting. But what they don't see is all the silent efforts she made before this point, the reminders, the chances, the way she still hoped you'd notice without having to say it every time. She gave you room to step up, not because she didn't know how to handle things on her own, but because she wanted to do life with you, not around you. Stepping up doesn't mean being perfect. It means being present. It means noticing when she's carrying more than she should have to. It means asking how she's really doing and sticking around for the answer. It's the small, steady actions that build trust, taking initiative, following through, apologizing without making it about you. That's what makes her feel safe. That's what lets her lean in instead of pulling back. And if you're realizing now that she pulled back because you didn't step up, don't let shame keep you stuck. Let it wake you up. You still have a choice, not just to reach for her, but to rise for her, to meet her where she's been standing, waiting, not for you to rescue the relationship, but to finally join her in it. Because when a good woman pulls back, it's not always the end, but it is a turning point. And how you move from here, that makes all the difference. Emotional distance isn't just a phase. It's not something that shows up one day and disappears on its own. It's a symptom of something deeper, a gap that starts forming when connection is no longer being nurtured. At first, it might feel like a little less talking at dinner, fewer hugs in the morning, shorter texts, longer pauses. But underneath those quiet changes is something real. She's still here physically, but emotionally, she's starting to check out. And the mistake a lot of people make is thinking that space will close itself with time. That if you just wait it out, things will go back to normal. But emotional distance is like a leak in the foundation. It grows if it's ignored. What you're seeing now, the way she's quieter, more reserved, less affectionate, it's not random. It's not just stress. It's not just a bad week. It's the result of moments that added up, moments where she tried to reach you and couldn't, moments where she was honest about what she needed and nothing changed, moments where she looked to you for emotional support and felt alone even in the same room. Those things don't just pass, they settle in. And slowly, that closeness you used to have gets replaced by polite conversation, routine, and silence. This is where it gets hard. Because when someone pulls back emotionally, it doesn't always come with an explanation. It's not always loud or obvious. You might not even notice it at first. But one day, you look over at the person you love and they feel like a stranger. And you wonder when that happened. How things got so quiet. And maybe part of you assumes it's just a rough patch. But what if it's not a phase? What if it's the result of her learning that opening up doesn't feel safe anymore? Emotional distance forms when emotional needs go unmet for too long. Not just needs for love and affection, but needs for presence, for curiosity, for someone to say, I see you, I'm still here, I still care. And when those needs keep getting overlooked, even unintentionally, she doesn't necessarily leave, but she withdraws. And that's often harder to fix because the longer she stays distant, the more normal it becomes. The more she convinces herself she's fine not needing anyone, that she doesn't have to feel deeply to function. If you're seeing that distance now, it's not the time to pull away too. It's the time to lean in, not with pressure, not with panic, but with presence, with patience, with the kind of consistency that rebuilds trust. You can't force her to open back up, but you can create a space where it feels safe again, where she's not punished for having feelings, where she doesn't have to carry the relationship emotionally on her own. Emotional distance isn't a phase. It's a response to being let down too many times. And if you want to close that gap, you have to show her through your actions that you're willing to meet her in the middle, not just once, but over time. That's how you build closeness again. Not overnight, but choice by choice, moment by moment, heart to heart. What happens when she feels alone with you is something most men don't see until it's already happening. And even then, it's easy to miss because she's still there. She's making dinner, handling the kids, responding to your texts, laughing at your jokes. But inside, she's carrying a loneliness that hits deeper than silence. It's the ache of being unseen by the one person she should feel safest with. And it's not because you're a bad person. It's because somewhere along the way, the emotional connection stopped being a two-way street. You stopped showing up in the places where she needed you most. Not physically, but emotionally. You can be in the same room, on the same couch, in the same bed, and she can still feel completely alone. Because presence without connection isn't closeness. It's distance in disguise. And when that distance keeps growing, she doesn't always speak up. She just starts adjusting, lowering expectations, filling her own gaps, learning not to count on you in the way she once did. That's the part that's hard to see because she's not yelling. She's not blaming. She's not making demands. She's just slowly learning how to do life without the emotional support she hoped you'd provide. A woman feels alone with you when her emotions feel too heavy for you to hold. When she opens up and gets a shrug or a joke or a distracted glance at your phone. When her hard days are met with, you'll be fine, instead of I'm here. When she expresses a need and it gets postponed, or worse, dismissed. Over time, that builds a message she starts hearing louder than anything you say. I'm in this by myself. And here's where it gets complicated. She might not even realize what's happening until she starts pulling back, until affection becomes something she gives out of habit, not desire, until conversation feels more like updates than intimacy, until she finds herself crying in the shower because that's the only place she feels safe to break. That kind of loneliness doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being connected to someone who no longer feels emotionally available. Now, you might say, but I'm here. I'm trying, I'm doing my best. And maybe you are, but relationships aren't just about effort. They're about understanding, about emotional presence, about tuning in even when nothing's being said. A woman needs to feel held, not just physically, but emotionally. She needs to feel like her heart is safe with you, that you notice when her energy shifts, that you care enough to ask what's really going on, not to fix her, just to see her. Because when a woman feels alone with you, she begins to protect herself from you. And that's when real love begins to fade, not because the relationship ended, but because the connection did. If you want to change that, it starts by showing up differently, by being the calm in her chaos, the soft space where she doesn't have to explain everything to be understood. Because when she stops feeling alone with you, that's when the relationship starts to breathe again.